I've been using GoHighLevel for the past 2 years, and in that time, I have built a number of pipelines. A lot of them were just for myself right at the beginning as I tried to go through and figure out how I can build my very own inbound pipeline and actually get this running. And then eventually it became that I did figure it out and then started to do this for my clients. Now, in this video, I'm going to go through and give you the full breakdown on what you need to be able to set up, where you should be looking, what needs to actually be sorted so that you ultimately can start tracking leads and use GoHighLevel, but to actually make money and not just have GoHighLevel for the sake of having GoHighLevel. Now, if you haven't used this before, we're going to be going through right to the beginning, but there will be timestamps in the description down below so that you can jump to the points which are most important to you. Now, with this, ideally you've created an account. If you haven't, there is also a link to that in the description down below. But with this, there are two different sites, and it confused me when I very first got started with this. And that is that you have the agency setup and then you have the sub account. Now, quite simply, the sub account is where you're going to be able to hold all the information. This is where you will be able to see the leads. This is where you'll see the opportunities. Everyone who is a contact, you'll be able to manage the websites, the funnel, all of that is within that sub account. The agency account will then hold sub accounts. This is set up for white labeling. That's just GoHighLevel's business model. So the idea is that you, if you had your agency account, you would have a number of clients within that agency account, with each one representing their very own sub account. If you're just starting, of course, you are going to have the agency account, and then you are just going to have your own individual sub account. And you'll be on that $97 or whatever it may be in terms of pricing subscription. So you can actually see from here, right now I'm actually on the sub account, I can go through, click, and I can actually go through and switch to the agency view, which will take me back to the agency. And then I can actually go through and click back onto the sub account and then actually go back in. Now with this, I'm actually going to just go back to the agency view and I'm going to create a completely new sub account over on here because I don't want to spend the rest of this video or my video editor to actually have to spend a lot of time blurring it and then me checking to make sure that every single detail for every single one of my contacts, which are leads as of right now, are actually, like they can't see it. It's not present available on YouTube. So we need to make sure that that would have been blurred. Much easier for me to go through and create a brand new one. Now, when you go through and create a sub account, you can start by selecting a template. If you have gone through and you've seen any other tutorials, there may be things out there. In fact, you can find people out there who will share snapshots of what it is that they've built. Just because it's free doesn't necessarily mean that it's worth going through and taking. It does depend on whether or not you need a specific automation or a pipeline build or whatever it may be that you will be able to get within that snapshot. I typically will go through and I'll start with a blank, or because we've worked with certain types of businesses a lot of the different times, that we are able to take a very specific snapshot that we know has worked well for pretty much them. So with that, I'm just going to go through, start with a blank one. When you've gone through and you've created your sub account, you will be welcomed with a page like this. This is going to be your launchpad. And yet again, it can be a bit confusing with agency and sub account. I said, I know it took me quite a bit of time just with the UI looking very similar. I didn't know what's what, but you will now be able to see on your sub account that you have your dashboard, conversations, calendars, contacts, opportunities, payments, and then you go through and you can see a few other features as well down here. Now, as a reminder, we're not going to be going crazy in depth with every single one, but we are going to be covering a few which are very important, especially looking at calendars, contacts, opportunities, and then we're also going to be taking a look at automation sites as well. There's a few things in there. So with this, you can now actually go through. Now with GoHighLevel, it is there to be an all-in-one. Should you treat it as that? I still don't think so. I don't do everything within GoHighLevel, and I am someone who did have a lot of tools right at the beginning. I then moved everything going into GoHighLevel, and then I've slowly made decisions of, okay, we want to do this. GoHighLevel is not the best at that. Let's go through and add this in, and then slowly start to build out. So I think it's worth starting with GoHighLevel, figuring out what you like, what you don't like, and then gradually starting to build beyond it pretty much. And I'll highlight the limitations with it as I go through. So the very first thing that you would need to go through and do is head over to your settings bottom left, and there's going to be a few things that you would want to go through and set up. The first thing is that if you are going to be taking any emails from your account to then be put within GoHighLevel or sending emails from GoHighLevel, you kind of want to go through and set this up. Now, for what I mainly do is go through and have this with SendGrid, which is another tool. So this will be an SMTP provider, and that will then allow you to connect your Gmail account or your domain. And then from there, you can actually send emails from your domain through SendGrid out to the people that you will be contacting in GoHighLevel. You could always go through and just keep this as a Gmail. It's pretty much going to go through and do the similar thing, except now it's going to send it directly from your Gmail. Once you have this set, there are going to be a few settings that you would need to also go through and do. I actually don't know if it's going to show it whilst I'm here. I'll have to blur out some information in here. But you would need to actually go through and make sure that you add yourself to this sub account. And then there would be a section which will allow you to actually have a two-way email sync. And you'll just need to go through and turn that on. I'll show an image of what this looks like because it's not going to show it until I actually link an SMTP, being either SendGrid or my Gmail. But this will allow you to actually receive emails, see them within GoHighLevel, and once you send them, you will also be able to see them. And it doesn't matter whether or not you send them directly from your Gmail or directly from GoHighLevel, it will sync up and you will be able to go through and see it, which does make life very, very easy because again, when I first started doing this, I went through, I did not set this up. I would send an email through GoHighLevel and then I would get a response in Gmail and I didn't see it. So then I would send up another follow-up on GoHighLevel. It got messy. Just go through, make sure that that is checked, and then you'll be able to go through and set this. If you want me to build your inbound pipeline so that you can run all of this, then I highly recommend taking a look at the link in the description down below. It is entirely free and I will run this with you, telling you exactly what you should be setting up. I did also briefly mention it there. You didn't see that when I actually went into settings that I did not have staff. Like there is no one here. What we need to be able to go through and do is add ourselves as a user, which sounds weird because like you've got the agency account that you should be part of the sub account, but it doesn't automatically add you. That's because, again, this is set up for white labeling. So the way in which you do that is that you go back over to your agency view. You can then go into your settings over on here. You'll be able to then go through and find team. You would then be able to find any team members that you add. So you can actually see some of my team members. I'm going to have to blur that as well. But you'll also be able to go through and see me. I can then go through and click on myself. I can then go over to roles and permissions. And there you can see add sub accounts. And then I can go through and add myself to that sub account. So we can now see that tutorial walkthrough, which is the sub account that I have. I can now go through, save that, click back, and then I can go back into that sub account, which I would then be a team member. This is very important because when we start to go through and do a few other things, such as the calendar, we would want to make sure that we have the calendar set to myself. If you are actually quite a bit bigger, that you've already got a sales team and you are not the person handling sales, then it's the case that you would add your team members to this, in which you could do it directly from the sub account and not the agency view, unless you wanted them to manage other client accounts. But if it's your very own sales team and you're going to be going through managing this, then it's the case that you would add the team members to your sub account. And then of course you'll be able to link them that way. But it now means once we go back over to here and I can actually go through and take a look at my stuff, I will, there we go, be listed, which means that we can then go through and apply settings and link things to that account. That account can now be an owner of some of those opportunities that do come through. We'll be talking about that in a bit. The next thing to go through and do is to go back over to domains, in which it's worth going through and connecting a domain. Now, you did need to do this already with your SMTP, which is where it goes into email services. That allows you to send emails. But if you're also going to be using GoHighLevel to then go through and hold websites or any types of landing pages or anything like that, then you are also going to have to go through and connect this. I'm not a massive fan of doing DNS. I do, of course, have to do this for my business anyway. So we've gone through this quite a few times, but it's always one of those things where it's just very tedious to go through and do. But whatever your actual domain provider is, you would need to go to there and you would then need to go through and connect this. So if you were to go through and connect, you'll be able to see that we got funnel, website, store, blog, webinar. You would then go through and click connect. Let's say that I had socialignition.co.uk. I can click continue and then it'll actually start going through and help me set this up, telling me exactly what I would then need to go through and set up with my DNS. So I would need to go through and start copying and pasting these across to my DNS settings. I have two different sources. We either use Porkbun. Mainly I use that when I'm going through and actually buying domains for cold email outreach. Anything else I normally keep on 20i. But wherever it is that you bought your domain from, that is where you'll be able to find your DNS settings. This is where you can have it. And then it means that when you do go through and put together any websites, landing pages, anything like that, you can actually have your own domain connected to it. So it's, yeah, again, your own website rather than whatever GoHighLevel is going to be providing. When that's done, the next thing to take a look at is your calendars. So this is where you'll be able to go through and send a link and people can then go through and book a call. But you would need to have a connection to this as well. The connection side of things, very, very tedious to go through and set up. But once you do it once, like you never need to go through and do it again. Over on here, if you go through, click on calendars, you'll have connections and then you'll be able to go through and add a new connection. This is where you'll need to decide what calendar you use. I mainly use Gmail. So I'm going through, I've got my Google calendars. So I would be able to go through and connect this over onto here. And then I'll also be able to go through and connect Zoom. Typically I go through and use Zoom. If you're going to be doing Microsoft Teams, Google Meet, or use any of the other calendars, you can then of course go through and use that. Once you have that connected, that does mean that you can then come back over and you can actually go back over to calendars, create a calendar, and then actually set it. So if you're going to be going through and doing personal booking, which I assume most of you would be, there are going to be some who won't be doing that. But now is when you can actually go through, have a calendar name. You can then link it to that team member, which we had to go through and do. That's why we needed to go into our agency account to add us to the sub account so that we can actually select ourselves. If not, you will not be able to go through and create a calendar. And then you can actually go through the process of getting this set up. This is very similar to any type of calendar builder. There are a few things that we would need to go through and check if we are going to make changes to what information we collect from someone when they book a call. But again, we'll talk about that in a second. Whilst we're here, I might as well go through and show this. I have just created a free strategy call. You can see it's quite basic, 30 minutes personal type. It is currently active. I haven't got any custom domains connected to this, and I still haven't added a connection to my own Google account because it's linked elsewhere and I don't want this to be a conflict. And that does mean that I'm going to be limited to some stuff, but we can then go through, click edit calendar. This is where you can start to go through and add that customization. So the description, if you wanted to go through and add a logo, start from location, availability, which of course does need to link to your calendar as well. You can set within here, in fact, I'll go through and click, you can set of like what time that you would be available. So like 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. So if you wanted that to be the booking, but you can also set what percentage of these are actually taken away. So it gives some idea that people are booking it if you're not getting started. I know a lot of people do this. Personally, I don't. If someone is looking to go from book and I'm available in the next, hour or so, or maybe, 12 hours from now, I kind of want them to book because then I can actually go through and get revenue from that. Whereas if that was blocked because I set that as a percentage of the total amount that's there to be blocked just because I'm not able to get revenue. Of course, there's the psychology side of like, oh, people think that you're booking up, but at no point when I've booked someone's calendar and they're not available for the next week have I thought, oh, they're very popular. I think that's a bit of a piss take. I can't see this person for a week and I kind of need their service right now. So I would end up looking elsewhere. That's just my way of going through and doing it. Of course, you can go through and set this up how you want. There is a part to this where you have your form set up, and this will allow you to go through and collect by default first name, last name, email, phone number, and then any notes. Chances are you do not want to just set that. You may want to, I personally remove last name. I normally want first name, email address. I then want website, how much revenue their business currently makes monthly, and then any important details that I should know. Plus, then at that point, once they sign up, we put them into an automation. That can't be set here. Like you can't change that. What you would need to go through and do is set up a form, and I'll show you where that is in a second. And then you would need to come back to here and then relink it. With all of that set, we can actually now get into the GoHighLevel side. So what you would need to go through and do, I recommend heading over to opportunities first, and then you will be able to go through and click on the pipelines. We don't have anything because of course this is brand new. I have two different sides in which I currently go through and manage this, in which I create a pipeline for SDRs. So this is when someone books a call, we have a pre-call like phase where we go through and we have that pre-call flow. That's the word that I was trying to think of, not phase, flow. But we would then go through that. And we also have SDRs who would then check to make sure they're qualified and get everything that they need before that call is booked, in which I do not want to go through and touch it. Once that's done, they mark it as qualified, in which that opportunity then goes into my sales pipeline. And then I know anyone who's in my sales pipeline has already been pre-qualified. And I know that, well, it's actually worth me going through and taking a call. So in here, I would then go through and have my SDR pipeline, in which we might have like new lead, contacted, proposal sent. We're probably not going to have proposal sent. I would have like qualified or unqualified. So unqualified. And then we also have qualified. So quite simply, we would then be able to go through, just check up on them. I wouldn't have contacted, but I'm just going to leave it in there, for example. But we can then go through and set this. Once that's done, that's going to be our SDR pipeline. Then I would go through and have my sales pipeline. So we will call this sales pipeline. In my sales pipeline, I actually have something similar to this. It's called booked, called complete, follow-up, short-term follow-up, no-show, closed, lost, closed, won. You will be able to set on the opportunity whether or not it's lost or won, or it's open as well. But I personally just like dragging and dropping and then trigger the automation to go from run it. This is where it does come down to preferences of how you run. The same over in here. Some people get confused with like follow up and short-term follow-up. Typically, I will have call complete. I will set within the opportunity of when I want to go from follow up, and then I'll make the decision of whether or not that's within the next 30 days or beyond the next 30 days. If it's within the next 30 days, it will pull it within short-term follow-up and it will just hold the opportunity there. If it's beyond 30 days, it actually deletes the opportunity and then sends it over as a task in GoHighLevel, and it will tell me to follow up with that contact at that point. And once they do book a call again, then of course it would be a new opportunity and it will go through and reset it. No show is also an automation where I drag and drop it over to there because they didn't show for the call. I don't want to spend any more time on them, but it will go through an email nurture sequence to be like, hey, we noticed that you didn't show up for the call, but you can reschedule here, and it'll just run through that until it's complete. They either say like they reject it, they tell us to piss off, or ideally they're just going to go through and reschedule. Most of the time they do reschedule. There are of course some people who don't. That's why I don't want to spend too much time on this. But we would then have that as a pipeline. That means whenever anyone books a call, by default, it adds them to our SDR pipeline. SDRs would then go through and check it, move them over to qualified. The second that they go to qualified, it goes into the sales pipeline. This now means once you go over to opportunities, you will be able to see this. You can see the sales pipeline over on here, and you will also be able to go through and see the SDR pipeline. Now, nothing is going to be coming through as of right now because, well, we have not set this up to do anything. I do want to jump away from this, but we will be coming back. But I just need some information in here before we can actually go through it any further. But I'm going to jump over to sites. Now, sites is going to hold funnels, website stores, pretty much everything that you can see at the top. We're not going to be going crazy in depth with all of this. It's actually quite simple to use like any other type of website builder if you've ever used any. But for this, I am going to head over to forms. You can go through and pull from templates to use this. For now, I'm just going to create something quite basic. It still actually gives us a template. It's just a very, very basic template to go through and use. But this is where we're able to go through and set forms. Now, first name, last name, phone number, email address, and then we got a few checkboxes in here with a button. I'm just going to go through and start deleting some of this stuff. And I'm also going to be jumping back and forth yet again. You do that quite a bit within GoHighLevel. So what I want to be able to pull is first name. So we're going to go through, click on this, and we're actually going to make that required. I'm not going to go through and take a last name. I do not really care too much about a phone number. I want the email address in there, but I do also want a few other details. Now you will be able to see some of this stuff that you can drag and drop in across, but there's also some things which, well, it's not there. Like I kind of want to have certain things, but it's not connected. So I'm actually just going to click save on this, and then I'm actually going to go back. Now where I want to go is I want to hold some information. Now it might be confusing how I go through and explain this, but ideally this is all going to make sense as you continue to watch this. But if you head over to settings, you will be able to find a section called custom fields. Now, these are custom fields that you can have on contacts as well as opportunities. Now, opportunities would show up within the pipeline, and then contacts are ideally forever going to be there. So you would need to make a decision of where you want this custom field to be. Do you want it to stay on that contact, or do you want it to be part of an opportunity? And it's important, that choice of how you actually want this to function, because it decides where things are going to go. And once you do link it to automations, how you actually update this. Now, I actually want to go through and I want to put this on a contact. If you did want to change this, you can then go through and select opportunities, in which you can set things over on here, or you can then go through, have this on contact. What I'm going to go and do is in fact, I want to create a new folder. So I'm just going to call this new section, just so that you can go through and see. And this will make sense. If it's confusing, don't worry, it will make sense. But I'm going to go into here and I'm going to go and add a new field. And I want this to be a drop down, which is single. And I want to go through and say that this is going to be business revenue. So ideally, we want a range that this is going to represent how much a business is earning, which then whoever's going to be booking a call would then need to go through and link this. So I've got this drop down, which says business revenue, 0 to 5K, 5K to 10K, 10K plus. So we can click save on that. Now this will hold within here. We can see that as custom fields. I'm now going to go back. I'm going to go back over to the forms. I'm going to go back over to the builder. I'm going to go and select this form over on here. And now, I think I called it business revenue. I can actually go through and search for business revenue, in which we got a new section. So that's what I called it. And I can go and drag and drop that over. So that would now be set. And we're also just going to go through and set this to be required. So we now have this first name, email, and then we also have business revenue. I'm going to call this, and I'm going to call this like calendar form, because I'm going to link this to the calendar that we've just gone through and built, just so I can actually show this as an example. But I can now go back. I can now head back over to our calendars. I'm going to go into, no, let's skip this for now. I'm going to go into our calendar settings. We can then go and find that calendar that was previously built. I'm then going to be able to find the form, which is under advanced settings. I'm going to change this now. I'm going to change this now to be our calendar form, which now means when we go and save this and we share this, what will end up happening is that I will have that as an option to fill in rather than what I had previously. So this is actually the free strategy call. You can see what I'm able to go through and do. I'm going to go through and say that we're going to book at 3 p.m. next. And now we can see first name, email, business revenue. So I could go through Jamie. I'm going to put a random email, and then I can select the business revenue that I want. And then we can go through and schedule a meeting. For me, it's going to say that that meeting has now been scheduled. Not that scheduled has been meeting, but that meeting has been scheduled. So I would then be able to go through and see that within my calendar, me as the person booking it, but also the person, you, the business owner, would be able to see this in your calendar, assuming that you've actually linked your calendar, because bear in mind, I haven't. It does now mean once we go back to GoHighLevel, I can actually select contacts over on here. And now we have our very first lead. Hooray, it's me. But I can now go through and click on this. This is going to hold all that leads information. So we can see everything that we had. Now, these are the custom fields that we previously went to, which means if we scroll down, we can see new section, which was the folder that I created. And we can see business revenue, which holds the custom field that I previously created. Remember how I said that if it was confusing, it would now make sense? Yes, this is the point in which it should make sense. Now, I did also mention that there could be an opportunity connected to this, in which there is opportunities set over on here. So what we will do is I'll show you how you can go through and automate this, but you would be able to manually add it if you did want to, where you can go through and create an opportunity, which is within the SDR pipeline. So ideally, once they book a call, it would add this automatically. At the minute, we haven't got that set up, but I'm just going to show you it manually, and then it will make sense of how the automation works. But we can then have this set over on here. I'm just going to create that for the time being. I'm going to go back over to our opportunities. So this will now show up within our SDR pipeline. You can see Jamie, free strategy call, that's what they've booked. We can also see when that call is, so March the 11th at 3 p.m. So that's the time in which I booked it. But you can currently see once we click on this, this is what it says. Opportunity details, we have this, and we've got like book / update appointment, tasks, notes, payments, associated objects. I don't really use that much, to be honest with you. But if we did want to go through and make some changes, let's say that you had your own process when going through and having your sales call, you can now come over to custom fields. You can go over to folders. You can change this from contact to opportunity, and you'll see that it says opportunity details. Very similar to what we just went through on the opportunity. We saw opportunity details. We can add a new folder, and let's say that this is going to be our sales call flow. We might have specific questions that we are going to ask that person. So I accidentally just added it to the contact. So I needed to delete it and then add it again, but this time back to the opportunity. But we can now go through and add a field over on here, and we can ask what service that they're interested in. So we can say that we had our drop down. We can then go through and call this service, and then we can actually go through and list a few services. So I've now put this set to be YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and the big mega service. So now once we go back to our opportunities and pipeline, we will be able to, oh, I'm still in settings. Once we go back to our opportunities where we can find the pipelines, we can then go through and see that I'm over on here, but this time there is a sales call flow, and you can see the service, and then we can go through and have that conversation on calls, but hey, like, what service you interested in? And they're going to be the big mega service. And then of course we can go through and set this. Everything can then be set within the opportunities. So then of course it makes sales calls a lot easier, and you don't need to be keeping everything within a Google Docs. You would quite simply set what questions you ask, add fields of where you can add information, and it all gets stored to that contact. The final thing that I want to show for this video is automations. Right now, what's happening is nothing. People are booking a call and we get a calendar and it adds them as a contact, which is just by default. But we want a few more workflows. One of the ones that is very easy to go through and set up is that when someone books a call, what ends up happening is that we add them as an opportunity. So we've got customer booked appointment, which is already set by default, and it already goes through and emails them. There's two different sides to this. You can, if you wanted to go through and have a confirmation email, you can actually set that within the calendar. We didn't jump too far into that because like I haven't set up my email or anything to this account, not even my calendar to this account for that matter. But you would be able to go through and set that over to there. So the second that someone books, it then goes through. You could also go through and have a bit more of an email flow. So when someone books a call with me, they get the confirmation and all of that. They do then get an email from me, which then says, hey, you've just booked a free strategy call, so that we're not wasting time on our call and I don't have to ask you loads of questions. Fill out this form and I'll actually prepare the strategy so we can hit the ground running. And then they go through, fill out that form, which pulls a bit more information. And then we actually have a counter, which would then wait a day before the call to send them a reminder, an hour before the call to send another reminder, 5 minutes before the call to send them another reminder, and then when that call actually starts. So that's actually helped improve and actually have more people show, or those who are not able to show, they can actually reschedule it a lot sooner. So I'm not wasting time. But you can set all of this down here. It quite simply has a trigger, so you need to define what that trigger is. In this case, is customer booked an appointment, and then you can hit that plus sign and you can go through and select all of this. Now, I did say at the beginning of this video, I will highlight things which are limited. With GoHighLevel, I'm personally not a massive fan of the automations, or some automations, and I'm also not a massive fan of the reporting. So what I end up doing is, in some cases, I will use GoHighLevel to trigger the automation, and then I would just go over, get a webhook, and then use that on make.com, which will allow me to do things a bit more complicated. I can send it over to there. So there are some limitations to this, but for what we want to go through and do, you can actually do it within GoHighLevel, where you can actually go through and update an opportunity or create an opportunity. We can define which pipeline it's in. And I said it earlier that I like my SDRs to be able to handle everything in a separate pipeline so they don't mess my sales and my flow up. So we can have an SDR pipeline, and we're going to add them to a new lead. We can then go through and have the opportunity name, in which that is going to be, what's name? Oh, GoHighLevel sometimes very, very specific. Even though it says name, it's not there. But if we go through and put first name, then it's there. That's a few other things which I personally don't like. We don't really need an opportunity score or an opportunity value. We could just go through and set the status to be open because we haven't won them yet. But now we can go through, hit save, and then we're able to go through and see this. Customer booked an appointment, we can then go through, create or update an opportunity. It will create it or even then go through and update it. And then in this case, by default, it's already gone through and said that there's going to be an email. Hey, thanks for booking a call. That, of course, you can go through and set anything in there. The downside is that right now I have not linked any SMTP providers or anything like that. So we're not actually going to be able to go through and do anything from like what email this will be. But we would then be able to set something like this up, which would then add an opportunity to that pipeline. Everything I've shown you should allow you to get things running. You should be able to have an MVP within just a few hours, be able to actually start running this so you can capture leads, and then from there, take it further. That's when you can start to look at other things with the funnels and the websites and the marketing and everything else. And maybe we will have videos on this channel which breaks each and every single one of them down, depending on when you're seeing this. If you do want more inbound leads, then I highly recommend watching this video right here. This video will show you how you can start creating content without it taking that much time and start to have ready to buy leads which are showing up to your calls. Click that and I'll be over there to guide you through absolutely everything. I hope you enjoy.